Hey, welcome in. It's Real Red Reaction, stream only, as you have Tennessee and Georgia kicked off. Chris Schmidt here at the Single Barrel, Elijah Herbal in his Bronco Shrine. Nebraska falling today 20-13, and Nebraska had a glimmer of hope, Elijah, to put a 2-minute drill together, and Nebraska unable to make it happen. A drop by Trey Palmer on fourth down, but this thing went really downhill. 17 impressive points. Nebraska outscored 17-3 in the second half. A lot of thoughts by Nebraska fans, and we'll have Mickey Joseph's comments after the game. But Nebraska fans, really after those first two drives, Elijah, you had 5 consecutive 3-and-outs, defense on the field. Minnesota had a couple of big drives, and then your difference today, points off turnovers, an interception by Chuba Purdy. Minnesota able to capitalize. There's your touchdown difference, 20-13. The Gophers have now won 4 straight against Nebraska, but tale of two halves. Great first half for Nebraska. Great first 2 drives offensively for Chuba Purdy, and then Nebraska just went desolate trying to run the football. Defense played well enough again to win the ball game, but the offense, there needs to be some questions answered moving forward with why Logan Smothers maybe wasn't more of an option. Easy to say hindsight-wise, but the kid had a grasp. He moved the football. Eventually, when they opened it up and let him just kind of run the offense, they were real careful with him for a couple of drives he was in. But credit to Minnesota and how they hung in. First time ever under P.J. Fleck that they came back to win from being down 10 points or more going into halftime. They were 0-32, their first win in that statistical category where they came back from double digits to win in the second half. Can join us here on Real Red Reaction. We're across different platforms as stream only, as you have 96 Kicks and KFOR and ESPN Lincoln on Facebook, Real Red Reaction on YouTube TV and ESPN Lincoln Twitter, along with KFOR Twitter, and the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter handle as well, at H Varsity Radio. Rock was tweeting during the game, and he's adamant it's all about the hire. I'm checked out on the lost season. All that matters is the new hire, and I'm so over Whipple. There's a lot of arrows going at Whipple, and man, he was, to put it nicely, very stubborn today with his play call and with what. Listen, you're down to your backup second and third teamer, and it looked like, again, they prepped pretty well enough, but when it came to adjustment time, Chuba has a lot of work to do.
And I would add that Nebraska, from halftime on, was outcoached by that Minnesota coaching staff simply because of adjustments that Minnesota is able to make. I always like to start off by giving credit to the winners here, and I'm going to do that briefly. Minnesota made a whole bunch of adjustments at halftime. They look like a completely different team in the second half, despite the fact that they had a backup quarterback in there. What they were able to do is they were able to establish the rushing attack. They just fed the ball to Mo Ibrahim. It seemed like the offensive line got some things worked out with what Nebraska's front was showing them. I think the coaching staff and the offensive line probably got together at halftime, made some adjustments. They got that right. And from that point forward, Mo Ibrahim was able to get going. It took a lot of pressure off their backup quarterback, which is, what you would think a coaching staff would want to do. But Nebraska showed today that maybe not. Maybe you want to put some pressure on the backup quarterback for whatever reason. So from halftime on, Minnesota outcoached Nebraska, outplayed Nebraska, and Mark Whipple is going to take some ire this weekend. I think he deserves it, but there's also the factor that Minnesota was selling out more to stop the run in that second half. They came out and said, you know what, Chuba Purdy was 6 of 11 in the first half, less than 50 yards passing, if I remember correctly from the stats, and they said, you know what, let's dare this guy to throw it. I think they had a concerted effort to stop the run in the second half. Whenever the running game wasn't there, Mark Whipple gave up on it very easily, tried to put the ball in the hands of Chuba Purdy. Chuba, I think, should have been pulled earlier. He never quite looked right after halftime. Really, after that first drive, didn't quite look like a guy who was going to go win you that football game. I was impressed when Logan Smothers came in, but it was too little too late for that Husker offense. And, my main takeaway here is credit to Minnesota's coaching staff for making the adjustments they needed to make at halftime. They were a much better team in the second half. A lot of questions for Mark Whipple. I'm curious to see what's going to happen with him whenever the coordinators go speak up on Tuesday and what Mickey's going to say post-game, and maybe we'll hear from Mickey Joseph a little bit later in our post-game show here. But, yeah, for the most part, it's credit to Minnesota is where I go here. It was a boring game to watch. Nebraska had a chance late, and it fell apart.
It was flat out agonizing to watch it go from 10-0 at halftime for Nebraska to then that slow death, right? It's 10-0 Nebraska has it. Minnesota puts a field goal drive together and cuts it down to 10-3. And then here comes the consecutive 3-and-outs, right? 5 of them in that second half. And then the payoff, you get another 3-and-out by the Nebraska defense. You get the football back. And listen, then Minnesota goes 10 plays, 86 yards, and they let old Mo pace himself, right? They figured things out. They got punched in the face in the first half by Nebraska, at least the first 2 drives offensively, and then defensively the Black Shirts were incredible. Nebraska had 5 tackles for loss in that first half. Defense played really well. I want you to comment too on some of the schematic changes you noticed from Nebraska's defense. But Nebraska did not have any answers. They either couldn't do it or didn't want to do it when it came to figuring out the management portion of this at quarterback. And you know how vital the quarterback is. I mean, Minnesota got their quarterback knocked out right at the end of the first half when Ty Robinson absolutely annihilated Tanner Captain Morgan. And Minnesota went with their backup, and to Minnesota's credit, they're a team that hasn't been great at throwing the football downfield. They didn't bury it. A couple of big plays loosened up Nebraska's run defense downfield. A couple of big plays into the wind, mind you, where Nebraska bit hard on the play action. So that was a credit to Minnesota's adjustment. And defensively, Nebraska, as they got leaned on in that second half, you saw a few more missed tackles on some key moments. But one thing that was interesting to see was Fleck and Mo Ibrahim go at it on that sideline because Mo wanted to go for it on 4th and inches. He got overruled by the bald man. And what was hilarious is it wasn't comfortable, and it was less comfortable hearing Fleck in his postgame. Uncle Andy is here, and he's going straight for the whiskey, which is good for him.
Gotta love Andy.
So it's just bad. A lot of comments we'll get to, and we'll take your Twitter interactions as well. Can chime into us at Schmidt_radio at Herbal Essence on Twitter, and then watch this all along, and it'll be posted as well. But there's been a lot of losses over the years, and this one is up there when it comes to frustration because of how you started, and then you had a chance, but you had things that you had control of. You had decisions to make. And when we talk about the coaching hire, when we talk about Mickey Joseph as a head man, as a CEO, from a management standpoint, Elijah, it's on him to let his coordinator make the right call. And listen, it wasn't an easy decision today with having to go back. You have Casey Thompson today, different ball game, sure. But you prepped Logan well enough, but you needed to be able to make that change at quarterback and give the kid a chance to win. It just there's a reputation of Mark Whipple as a really good play caller, a really good developer. He's been in football for 50 years, but the reputation that is with Whipple is his stubbornness. Okay, and it seemed really stubborn with his play calls and his game plan. It's limited because of your personnel. And if you don't see Chubba or you don't see Logan make plays in practice, you're really sure as hell not confident to call it in a game. But at some point, you got to kind of throw caution to the wind and just see if they can go get it. See if they're a gamer. See if they can go make it happen. And Nebraska unable to do that. And, yeah, we'll have Mickey's audio here. More input from you. Smothers, to his credit, didn't mope around when he wasn't playing. He got his opportunity, got pulled. They went back to Purdy, That was the death nail with the interception. Chuba, bless his heart, went out there to try and do his best for his team, but it wasn't good enough. Nebraska needed to make changes sooner rather than later.
Well, and what shocks me is the fact that Nebraska, week in, week out, wins. It feels like in preparation before the game. It feels like they win the week of preparation, and they go out there and they play well. They have a great scripted first drive. The defense plays on fire early. That's been the theme for more games than not this season. And then the wheels fall off for the offense. I can't explain that, why Mark Whipple is able to call plays whenever they're scripted and why he is unable to call plays once the game gets going. Maybe it's a defense making
unscripted.
But and maybe whenever he goes unscripted, his mind just goes to pass plays. It's shocking at this point. And I have been one to defend Mark Whipple before today and say, you know what, he doesn't have much to work with. But whenever the run game is working as well as it does, and then you have an ineffective quarterback in, and you have a running quarterback behind him who is able to make things happen with his legs, why don't you go to him sooner and open up your rushing attack again? Because it did feel to me like in the second half, Minnesota was able to key in on the Husker rushing attack and say, you know what, from what we saw from Chuba Purdy in the first half, we're going to dare that guy to go beat us with his arm. And that worked out well for them. And as soon as that happened, I mean, you could see it, Schmidt, in the early third quarter. I'd even go as early as the second quarter. When Nebraska got the ball on Minnesota's side of the field, couldn't even pick up a first down, had to punt it right back. There was clearly something that was off, and I think that the change at quarterback should have been made at halftime. Despite the fact Chuba started the game well, he really did nothing else beyond that first drive. And it didn't feel like he was going to get things figured out either. That's when I would have made the switch. Mark Whipple was hard-headed, stuck with it, continued his same game plan in the second half that wasn't working in the second quarter, continued that game plan into the third quarter. It wasn't working. And as we have a comment in here from Jeff, he says Mickey is his number one guy, but if Mickey can't control Whip, fire them both. I think that's a little far, but that is one of the responsibilities of a head coach is you have to have your coordinators under your control. The buck stops with you, and Mickey Joseph needed to say something at that halftime to say, hey, something's not working, whether it's your play calling, whether it's your quarterback, something needs to change. I did not see a change from the offense from the second quarter to the third quarter when things clearly were not working in the second quarter. And if you as the head man are not going to be able to go talk to your coordinator and tell him to get things figured out, it falls back on you. And that's one of the pitfalls of a guy who does not have all that much head coaching experience at this level. These are learning on the job moments. I do think that he may have been behind that quarterback change in the third quarter to bring in Smothers. You could see him in the huddle, sending Smothers into the huddle and talking to Purdy on the sideline. I wonder if that was a Mickey decision to make that quarterback change. So maybe that's a learning lesson from last week. But that's a part of learning on the job when you're a first-time head coach. That's one of the pitfalls here if Mickey is going to be the guy moving forward.
That's Elijah Herbal, Chris Schmidt here, Real Red Reaction. We are presented by Currency for all your equipment. Financing needs, go Currency. Stream only as on ESPN Lincoln. We have Georgia and Tennessee. Rocky Top up 3-0. We're down here at the Single Barrel. Well, Elijah's in his Denver shrine. I'm at the Single Barrel. I'm guarding the whiskey because Lord knows there's a lot of Nebraskans that need a drop of whiskey. This is just frustrating if you're a Nebraska fan because you were up and then it went away, and then there was a tease. There's a little glimmer of hope with getting the football back, and it wasn't a situation where maybe you felt ultra confident, but you still had some breath. And now it doesn't feel like the season has breath anymore because you're going to have to win out to go to a bowl game. I do love the fact that Chuba came in and sparked the offense. I thought the throw to Washington was a thing of beauty, but you were just reluctant to call that, to go there, either because of trust or because, well, this isn't, and this is reading too much into it, but the thought crossed my mind, okay, this isn't his quarterback. How's Whip going to react if he was told to play Smothers versus his guy in Purdy? I agree with you that you needed to go to the bullpen sooner. And what would the game have looked like if you start Smothers? Do you have the same start? We don't know. Those are all hypotheticals. But moving forward against Michigan, against Wisconsin, against Iowa, let's see the rest of the Chuba, I should say the Logan Smothers show. Kid who's put his time in and just seems to rally. It was so bad where Nebraska lose a yard, or get a no gain on first down. They try a draw or try and get something on second down during those 5 straight 3-and-outs, Elijah. And then it was Red Rover time on 3rd and long, where both Nebraska's tackles just got caved in on by a team that's not great against the pass rush, with the pass rush, and that's Minnesota. But Minnesota had a field day because of down, distance, and situation, and Nebraska really never got going. Jeff chimes in. He says Whipple is a joke, and if Mickey needs to coach as if he wants the job, I think Mickey did, but you do have to adhere to your coordinators. Those are guys that you pick. Here's the other thing, Elijah. You just don't, from the get-go, you just don't know if everybody's on the same page offensively. Whipple, who he likes and wants at quarterback after the number 1 spot. What you need in the Big Ten versus what Whipple is known for, and that's throwing the football. And then what's your level of communication and trust like with your offensive line coach and your offensive coordinator? What do you even feel confident in doing? Again, credit to Minnesota. 17 points in the second half, outscoring Nebraska 17-3, but it was a little rough, and Nebraska had their chances on that drive in the second quarter at the Gopher 48. You get points there. Maybe it's 13-0, maybe it's 17-0, but Nebraska needs to manage better, and that's going to be an objection to some for Mickey Joseph with the head coaching job discussion.
And what is confusing me right now is Mark Whipple said after the last game, and Mickey Joseph said that too, that they thought that Chubba Purdy gave them a better chance to compete if you had to go to the air, if you had to throw the football. From what I saw today, and I know I'm not there at practice every single day, but from what I've seen today and from what I've seen on the field from Logan Smothers, I have seen a guy with a better completion percentage and is able to hit his receivers better than Chubba Purdy. Maybe the moment's too big for Chubba. Maybe he looks great in practice and the moment gets too big and he can't perform. But today he had 6 completions on 16 attempts for 41 yards and only 10 attempts for Logan Smothers, 5 completions, 80 yards, 8 yards per completion. 8 yards per completion. Or excuse me, I should say 8 yards per attempt. Only 2.6 yards per attempt for Chubba Purdy. I don't care what it looks like in practice, because what I've seen with my eyes in the game, which is when it counts, is that Logan Smothers not only is a bigger threat on the ground, he's a bigger threat through the air. So I just don't understand that this love affair from Mark Whipple and Chubba Purdy. I know that's your guy, but what has he shown you in a game scenario that has made you think, you know what, this is the best guy to lead my offense?
Where's the
it makes
trust?
no sense to me.
Where's the trust during game time? Where's the trust? Here's your numbers for Chubba, and it takes more than just him. Okay, so this isn't bash Chubba. But he's the catalyst for it on offense. 16-34, 91 yards, 3 interceptions for the year. Okay, and those interceptions, none of them are great, but it was backbreaking today. That's your difference in points off turnovers. Mickey Joseph, after the game, his press conference over, we'll get there in a minute. Logan gave us a better chance when they made the switch in the fourth quarter. He added, we probably should have switched to Smothers earlier. Didn't. And, you know, Mickey's been coaching a long time. Caleb Tanner in the postgame says they wanted it more than us. So there's that. But you've got a really dicey situation now with Michigan looming. You pray that the team doesn't check out or quit, because they're going into a buzzsaw Saturday against Michigan. This is absolutely demoralizing when you piss away a 10-point lead against a team that does not come back from double-digit deficits.
Well, you know what's going to make this team roll over? If they get up to Michigan next week and Chubba Purdy rolls out as the starting quarterback. Based on what I have seen from Chubba Purdy, that team is not behind him. The receivers looked frustrated playing with Chubba Purdy today because of how ineffective he was through the air.
Yeah.
Erratic. Erratic's a great way to put it. And I mean, it's not even like he is under pressure like we've seen from Casey Thompson all year long. Minnesota, 3 sacks today, which not a great number. You hope for 0, but 3 is a winnable total. If you give up 3 sacks in a game and you yourself get 4 as a team, all in the first half, mind you, but 4 as a team, only give up 3. That's a win for Nebraska based on what we've seen from the offensive line. These quarterbacks had time to throw today. Chubba Purdy had happy feet back there, despite good pockets. He would try to break contain whenever he could have stepped up and delivered a dart. It was frustrating to watch as a Nebraskan trying to sit back and watch that game, because pissed it away is the best way to put it. That Husker football team, through play calling, through a turnover by Chubba Purdy, through just ineffective offensive play calling. I'm dumbfounded.
You don't have an identity with what can you lean on, what can you do for success. And I you know what? I don't know what I'd call if I'm going to the hill. I'm going to die on that hill with Chubba Purdy. I don't know, dude. They got it ready and together and prepped and all good that first drive. As good as a drive as you've seen all year. It's beautiful. And then you get in the red zone. There's some quarterback scramble. There's some improv that worked. So I get the athleticism, but even downfield, Elijah, it was just a nightmare with Purdy at the helm. There are things though you can build on. I do believe with Smothers for the rest of the year.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is Logan Smothers better be your guy moving forward? But from what I've seen from Mark Whipple, I'm not convinced he won't go back to Purdy next week. That's what's terrifying to me, and that's what I think will make a team roll over. There's no confidence from this team in Logan Smothers, or sorry, I should say in Chubba Purdy. No confidence from the team. If I'm a guy on the team and I just saw those 2 performances and Chubba's the guy next week, why am I giving effort? Because I don't think Chubba Purdy is putting us in a position to win that football game, especially against a team like Michigan.
Listen to this. Nebraska held a team defensively that is 70% conversion rate on third down. That's what Minnesota does against unranked teams. 60% on average. Nebraska's defense held them to 3 out of 11. Of course, Nebraska was 5 of 16. Total yards, Gophers landed at 300. They were at -7 going into halftime, rushing the football. They ended up running for Minnesota's offense, for them to be held to 125 yards rushing the football by the Nebraska defense. Incredible. Nebraska ran for about 100.5 today. That's good enough to win. The turnover is the X factor, and it's decision-making. And, Nebraska, God, it's just so frustrating if you're a big Red fan to look at all those missed drive opportunities where it's 3 and out, because you can't get much going on first down, and you're hamstrung with what option you chose at quarterback. And, you're up against it now to try and get bowl eligible. Sparty is trailing Illinois. Ohio State, in just awful conditions, found a way to hang on against Northwestern 21-7. Purdue got the return middle finger from Iowa, 24-3. Purdue got rocked. And Wisconsin, and they're all red, 23-10. Uncle Andy's studying that menu like he's Jeffrey Dahmer right now, just to give everyone a visual.
Get the pork chop.
We're here at the Single Barrel with Real Red Reaction. Some more comments to get to. You want to talk to us, can tweet at us, can watch us. Real Red Reaction, also on the YouTube channel, ESPN Lincoln's Facebook, ESPN Lincoln's Twitter, Hail Varsity Radio's Twitter, KFOR Twitter, 96 Kicks Facebook, KFOR Twitter. So you can communicate that way. Corey checks in, lack of adjustments, poor play calling, poor quarterback play. Did the Huskers in? It's time for Trev to make a coaching hire. Enough of the drama. Folks are ready. Folks are ready to move on for the season. And while it's not a one-game season for Mickey, it's a body of work. It's a how they look for hanging in undermanned against Minnesota like you did. Listen, if you took the end result before you knew what was going to happen and said, okay, Nebraska lost to Minnesota 20-13 and held to 125 yards, you'd say, damn, that was a great effort by Nebraska. what was the turnover differential? Blind stats, right? You'd be okay. Nebraska fought valiantly, but the real story is you were up 10-0.
And Minnesota is 0-32 when trailing by double digits at halftime.
Right? That's the story. And a lot of that came down to management. And that is a case against. Here's the other true question we just won't know the answer to until an announcement is made. With the Nebraska job, if you're being real honest with yourselves, as much as we love the place, we love covering it, you love going, or you used to anyway. Nebraska, have they been told no? Does Trev have a guy that would fix all of this? And is Nebraska really that desirable? It's sacrilege to say out loud, but if you just be real honest with where the football program's at, the drama that's been around it, and the missteps and the mishires, if you're comfortable and you're not in jeopardy and you're actually being appreciated going 7-5 to 8-4 to 9-3, well, can you put a price? Is $2 million more a year compensation that's worth taking? You and I say, well, hell yeah, because Nebraska's good at writing checks for people to leave. Trev won't be, all right, aside from the Frost inheritance. So that's the question too. And this sounds awful to say, but Mickey may be your guy because of plan B. Mickey may be your guy because of default, and you can work with that. He can learn. He can get better. But there's just been some issue with management, okay, with backup quarterback. And it comes down to that delicate dance of going and letting your coaches coach and not being a micromanager, but also knowing, okay, what do I truly have at quarterback? And the way, as good as they've been practicing-wise with tackling and being physical, your backups, not until now, haven't gotten the work they've needed, okay? Or at least the work they've needed hasn't translated onto the field, except for when you let when you let Smothers, actually get in rhythm and play some series. Up 3 and out. Let's go back to Chubba. You've got to stick and stay with the guy for a little while. And Whipple's has refused to do that, but Whipple's gone with the wrong option more times than not. It was a nice big stick it to you response with all the question marks and all the doubt about Chubba Purdy that first drive, but you didn't stack on top of that. You had 2 drives, and then you went silent the rest of the ball game, and your defense was left out there to hang out to dry. Jeff chimes in, give Mickey a shot for a year or two with his own staff. Whip is half-assing the job. I don't think so. I think he's just that confident, stubborn in what he believes in. And Matt's 1,000% right. You should have put Smothers in way sooner. And can you bring in the coach you want? So Rob is saying, where do I find the show on the radio? We're running Tennessee and Georgia right now. It's a stream-only show, Rob. And that's how it's going to be. How do we respond to him?
Plenty of ways to find us. You can go we're on the Kicks 96.9 Facebook page, KFOR's Facebook page, ESPN Lincoln's Facebook page, as well as ESPN Lincoln's Twitter, KFOR's Twitter, the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter page. Give us a follow at HVarsity Radio. And then finally, if all else fails and you don't want to go to social media, maybe you're off social media yet, youtube.com. The Real Red Reaction Show has its own page. You can find us streaming there after every game, actually. So we some games over the air, some games go on stream, depending on what other college football games we have on TV. But you can always find our show, Real Red Reaction Show YouTube page.
You can watch it and listen to it on your phone real easy, or your tablet or computer. There's fear of going to Michigan already by Jeff. Totally get it. Al, where were those UNL security guards to remove Whipple for his play calling, which is a joke. Chandler chimes in from the bar. Lack of adjustments in the second half cost us the game. Sam, we didn't defend. Our receivers didn't catch, and we threw an interception. No change in the way we played for the last 3 years. Play great for some of the time and lose by one score.
Well,
JP is, they look like a better football team, but they're still not a good football team.
Well, they came
That's
out with
my take on it.
better,
We're going to bring JP into the picture.
They came out with a better offensive and defensive game plan than Minnesota. They came out with that from the first drive on. Minnesota outcoached Nebraska, though. From in-game adjustments, halftime adjustments, play calling, Minnesota outcoached the Husker coaching staff, bar none, following that first drive. Nebraska was up 10-0. It didn't feel safe because of how bad Nebraska's offense looked from that point on, and especially coming out of halftime, Minnesota was able to make some adjustments, get their rushing attack going. From that point on, I mean, I knew Nebraska wasn't going to win that football game. Nebraska was only going to win that football game if they held Minnesota to what felt like 10 points at the time. I wasn't confident Nebraska was going to go score again. I thought if it was 10-10 at the end of regulation, Nebraska was going to lose 13-10 or 17-10 in overtime.
Well,
I am actually pleasantly surprised Nebraska was able to get one more field goal in that game because I didn't see that coming. I didn't see Nebraska moving the ball past the 50 again, but some others came in and provided a spark. That's why I think he's got to be the guy for Michigan, and that's a long ways ahead to be looking whenever we're trying to talk about the Minnesota game. But that's my take here is like Minnesota came in and coached you with their adjustments, both halftime, in-game. And
their backup quarterback came in and did the job. Their backup quarterback came in and scored 17 points on you in the second half.
How novel of an idea is it that you have a game plan that is run heavy whenever your backup quarterback comes in? Novel idea, I know. Whenever your backup quarterback comes in, I know you don't trust him to sling the rock as much as you trust Tanner Morgan. You get a rush heavy attack going, and then you get some easy pitches and catches on those slant routes coming out of RPOs. That guy didn't make – I'm not going to attempt to try to pronounce his last name, so apologies. That guy didn't make any difficult throws.
Calamanis. Calamanis is how you say it, and he's very adept at the slant. JP is playing in traffic out on One Memorial Drive. JP, thanks for joining us. You were at the press conference. Chime in here. Your thoughts. It's obviously a quarterback discussion today, my friend. A little bit too late going to the bullpen.
Yeah, unfortunately, this did not work, and it worked for Minnesota. We could not sustain any kind of drives. And I don't know if it's completely – I don't know. I don't know if it's completely the quarterbacks. I don't know if it's completely the coaches. I don't know if it's completely the running backs.
JP, we're not getting any clean audio from you, dude.
JP, out of the wind.
At all.
Out of the wind.
All right, let me stop here.
Better.
How about now? Better? Okay. I don't think it's completely the quarterbacks, and I don't know if it's completely the line. It was the play calling that was just so questionable at the end. When you know you need big yards and you can't get those yards, then you've got to change the play calling. You've got to block better, and that's not what was happening. They were not able to get – I don't know how many times our left tackle let Chuba get destroyed or almost destroyed, where he had to run away and make something happen or throw the ball out of the bounds. It was poor consistency throughout the whole second half, and I don't know why things changed so drastically, but it wasn't there. And you'll hear it from Caleb Tanner when you go to the audio from the presser today. He's like, we haven't played a full game. We haven't played a full game yet, and when we do, we'll probably win that game. And he is probably, and it's like, well, okay, a lot of probablys there, and not a lot of consistency, and not a lot of we're going to win the game. It's just tough.
JP, come on over to the single barrel where the Yeti is set up, and have a cold one if you want for a Real Red Reaction. We'll save you a spot over here. We got a great setup. Thanks for checking in after the post game, brother. And we'll see you here in a little bit. All right, good stuff from JP from 96 Kicks, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbal, and we're streaming here, stream-only show. Really good tweet in from Steve as he checks in. Stephen Eagle 86 on at Schmidt_radio. I think this is a microcosm of why Nebraska continues to lose. It also shows that Mickey may not be ready to be a head coach because he doesn't react when a change is needed at quarterback when you continue to go 3 and out. And it's about experience. And Mickey's a guy that doesn't pull punches, Elijah. Mickey's a guy that'll speak his mind. I think Mickey's also pretty patient, and I think he likes and he respects Whip. But there's just stubbornness that needs to be ruled out. And you just got to know what your guys can do and can't do. And that's a tough ask based on how the grooming's been going for the backup quarterback, and probably a little bit defeatist, honestly, with all right, what now once Casey's out? You have to really, if you're going to tell us about next man up, you got to have your next man up ready beyond 2 drives once the defense adjusts to you. And listen, if you're hell-bent on leaving Purdy in, what's wrong with going back to what worked earlier, and that is some short dump-offs to the tight end, some checkdowns. Just keep the sticks moving and let the kid use his legs, okay? And every time Chuba tried to throw downfield, it was a bit dangerous. He was airmailing a lot of his throws to his receivers that were open.
Yeah, and he was staring down his receivers too. I'm not sure if you noticed that he never once. And this is a young quarterback, especially in college. It's not expected that a young guy would be able to look off a safety, but it never once looked like he ever moved past his first read. It was either first read was there and he threw it, first read wasn't there and he still threw it, or first read wasn't there and he ran the football. Never it once looked to me like he advanced through reads at all. And I just can't seem to figure out, maybe it's based on just how far he can throw the football. I can't seem to figure out why the coaching staff thinks that Chuba Purdy is better at throwing the football than Logan Smothers. Like, maybe the dudes that can throw the ball 70 yards in the air, that's awesome. He doesn't have good ball placement. He misses his receivers. He doesn't seem like he can make reads. It's just nothing about what he does leading the offense gives me confidence that that guy is good at slinging the rock. Maybe he's got great arm talent. Maybe he can throw the ball a long way. But what I see is not a guy who is ready to be a Division I quarterback right now. What I see from Logan Smothers is a guy that understands his own deficiencies and at least inspires some confidence in his teammates, where he's going to put the ball in a place where you do have a chance to at least catch the football. He's going to use his legs with more effectiveness whenever it's necessary, and you have the added element of the quarterback run game whenever Logan Smothers is in the game. Whenever you did have the added element of quarterback run late in the game, it felt like those rushing lanes were opening back up for Anthony Grant because now the defense had something else to think about that they didn't have to think about when you're trying to force-feed Anthony Grant the ball in the second and third quarter. So I, for the life of me, just cannot figure out why there was no changes made on that Husker sideline, because it felt like they had their game plan they came into the game with, and then as soon as Minnesota made any sort of changes to counter that, they said, well, there goes our chances. We had our game plan, but now we're done for. They figured us out. Like, why was there no adjustments in the game that at least from my eyes watching the game on TV, I didn't see any adjustments from the offense on how to attack a Minnesota defense that was now saying, you know what, beat us through the air. We're going to stuff the inside up for Anthony Grant, leaving quarterback run open and daring you to throw the football. I can't figure it out what they were trying to do offensively after that first quarter, what they thought was going to work against that Minnesota defense, because Minnesota countered and Nebraska felt like they were banging their head into a brick wall with some of those play calls because Minnesota was clearly ready for them and made adjustments for those offensive play calls.
Don't disagree with you. And it's an uphill climb. Michigan's going to be very ugly. Al asks a good question. Who else can do some play calling? Can Mickey do that? How many 3-and-outs did they force against us? 5 consecutive, Matt. I think 7 for the game. Brennan, who's deer hunting, I hope he got Bambi. Imagine if old Whipsicle put his pretty pride aside and at the start of the last half last week and this week, maybe have a different result. Let's hear from Mickey Joseph as we've got some of Mickey's audio here.
Oh, we're going ghetto.
Okay, I'm going to take my hat off to PJ and the Minnesota football team. They stayed in the fight. Very experienced football team. We had to execute on all three phases of the game. We had to win the second quarter and the third quarter. We talked about that. That didn't get done. We got to go back and look at the film and see what we need to fix. But I thought the guys played hard. I thought they played to the end.
What do you think about Shogo coming out there, getting the start, and jumping up with a good start as well?
I thought he saw it early. Saw it early. But I didn't think he saw it towards the end of the game. So that's why it was the change with Logan. I thought Logan gave us a better chance.
I think you went 6 straight 3-outs. You shot within the 7 possessions of the game. Did you think about going to Logan earlier?
Yeah, we probably should have, but we figured we had to throw the ball down the field. And then when he wasn't seeing it, then I figured we had to make a change. But you're right, in this league you can't do that. You can't go 6 3-and-outs in this league. You can't do it because they'll eat the clock up.
Which throw can Logan basically not make that you feel like Chuba needs to be in there to throw? Which one was that today?
Well, you're right about that, Sammy. He made some good throws today. And you just got to be more consistent in practice for what we see. But he played. He stood up today.
You said Chuba's not seeing it.
Well, he's not seeing the coverage. He's not seeing the progression that he needs to get to. The way he needs to get the ball to. We have kids running open, and he's got to find him. He's got to hit him.
Did it get close with Casey at all today or beforehand?
Well, I thought he had a better feeling. He had more feeling in his hand today, but I just didn't feel comfortable playing him. He's been had a lot this year.
What was it about their backup quarterback that gave your defense more trouble than their starter?
Well, they threw it more with him than we thought they would throw with him, and we knew he would pull the ball. He's probably a better athlete than two. So they felt comfortable. And that kid had snaps. That kid played against Minnesota. I think he played the second half of Illinois. So it was a backup, but it was a backup that had game reps.
You're thinking in the first half of the game, 10-yard rushing in the second. Drop off like last week, 36 yards.
Well, I'm going to go back and look at it. But I thought they did a better job up front of in their gaps. And I thought we had to do a better job of moving them out of the gaps.
What did they do on offense in the second half? I mean, you held them to 31 yards in that first half on defense. Besides Lowe just getting going, what were they doing?
Well, it was a 2-score game. They stayed with their game plan. When you play a team like that, you got to really get 3 scores up on them before they can change their game plan. It's a 2-score. They're comfortable. They're going to continue to do it. Just like like we said, it was a wishbone offense. So they was going to stick with their game plan as long as it was a 2-score game because it was in reach.
When you get into a spot where you're going back and forth between two quarterbacks, can you describe how the process works on the sideline between you and Coach Whipple and how those decisions are made in the moment?
Well, I thought Whip and I was on the same page because when we thought the kid was struggling, wasn't seeing it, we went to Logan. So we communicate, and I'll let Whip makes the call. But if I think it's a call that he should make, then I'll let him know. But we were on the same page today when it came to the quarterbacks.
Only 31 yards for Minnesota. Did you think of this defense?
They play lights out. I thought the defense played lights out throughout the whole game. They gave us a chance to win.
Was their 2 long passes were actually against the wind? It looked like one on Hartzog. Maybe he thought the ball was going to sail and maybe come to him. Did the defensive backs misjudge it based on the wind? Those couple of throws?
Well, I thought he was going for the pick. He was a taller kid, so you teach the shorter corners to play the hands. So I thought he was going for the pick, and the ball hung up there. And as the ball hung up there, the guy out jumped him. But he was going for the pick, and like you said, I thought he was going to be overthrown.
Nick, what's to say about the team where you're at right now? You get the ball back. You still have a chance to tie it. Logan on the 35 or 80.
Yeah. He said the same thing, that he should have ran it, and he would have at least got 2 or 3 yards. But he said the same thing. We thought he should have ran the ball. Use your feet right there.
And then the fourth down play, you have arguably the best player catch.
Yes, he's got to grab that. He's got to squeeze in. It's a bang play. He's going to be a catch and a hit at the same time. He's been in that situation before. We expect him to catch those balls.
Is this all part of it?
Yeah, it's part of learning how to win. It's part of executing. You got to execute in this league. And you start the first half with the defense. The defense executed. The offense executed. When you execute in this league, you're going to have success. If you don't execute in this league, then things like this is going to happen. I got to do a better job to get them to execute.
What's your level of concern now at 3-6, and you probably couldn't have a tougher assignment where you're going next week?
Well, we talked to the boys about that. We're gonna stick together. We're gonna block out the noise. And we're going to come back tomorrow. We're going to look at the film. We're going to fix the things we need to fix. And then we're going to move on to Michigan.
Mickey, you said earlier in the week that Chuck plays a little bit nervous sometimes. Did you see that?
Yes, and towards when he started not seeing it, thought he got a little antsy in the pocket.
What was the strategy with mixing in AG and Mir coming in for a couple of plays? What did they offer?
Well, AG got a little winded. And then we wanted to try to get Ramir in there, so we see if we can pop one and get some speed in there on the draw plays. So when AG got winded, we just thought we should go Ramir right there.
Anything else?
Thank you, guys.
That was Mickey Joseph, his post game. Thanks to JP for making that happen. As he was at the press conference, Nebraska falling 20-13 in a game they led 10-0 going into halftime. Our old buddy Vic, well, put some lipstick on that turd. We covered the spread. So Vic always there. I don't know if JP got lost or what, but he may be joining us over here. We'll have Caleb Tanner and Ty Robinson. Maybe Anthony Grant as well.
And one thing that's interesting to me about some of Mickey Joseph comments there was that he kind of echoed something I said during halftime, and that's that your whole game plan starting the third quarter was to try and get Minnesota to get out of their offensive rhythm. That's what Nebraska was able to do in the first half that allowed them to succeed is they jumped out on Minnesota early, and Minnesota stopped feeding Mo Ibrahim as much. I think he only had 8 carries in the first half. They're trying to sling the ball around Tanner Morgan a little bit, and Nebraska was able to get after Tanner Morgan. And if you were able to go put together one drive to start that third quarter and go put points on the board, make the score 17-3 after Minnesota went down the field, Minnesota's going to have to play that second half differently if you're able to go and get a touchdown. I know based on what we saw from the offense, that was a tall order, but if it's Logan Smothers coming in that football game, based on what I saw from him in the fourth quarter, I think you had a much better chance that Logan Smothers could lead you down the football field and get you some points. If you make that quarterback switch at halftime, I'd go as far as to say I'd like Nebraska to win this football game. So I think Logan Smothers could have at least led a drive with that quarterback run. Now the adjustments that Minnesota made on halftime, they're out the window because it's a new quarterback and you're going to be doing different things. You can catch them off guard to start that third quarter. You get some points on the board. Now the backup quarterback is going to have to be a drop-back passer against Nebraska. You don't have as much time to be able to feed Mo Ibrahim, and it's a completely different second half. And again, that falls back on Whipple. And I know this show is starting to turn into the pile on Whipple show, but
well, and then there's Monday. You have 24 hours to be pissed about it, and you gain an hour tomorrow.
Well, who knows if Mark Whipple's the offensive coordinator come Monday? Something tells me
he
will be.
Really? You think that he'll make a?
Today was bad. Today was bad.
I know. And the second half of Illinois was bad as well, but there's also some good. There's also some good. You just need to have a very frank conversation with him, and say, "Listen, we're going with Smothers. You know what he can do. Design it to highlight his skills, put him in position to succeed."
And what makes today look worse is the fact that Minnesota was forced to go to their backup quarterback. And when Minnesota went to the backup quarterback, the offensive game plan from Minnesota changed. It felt like they had a plan. They had a game plan that was there to, bring out the best of their backup quarterback. And he was able to have a fine game. That comes down to Shiraka. Shiraka did a great job scheming up a game plan in the second half for his backup quarterback. Whenever Mark Whipple, a guy who's a lot more experienced calling plays, a guy who's been a head coach himself, a guy who's been all around football pretty much his entire life, whenever he can't scheme up things for his backup quarterback, it makes you wonder, especially whenever you have a running game today. You can't blame the fact that you didn't have a running game. You had a running game. It went away a little bit during the second and third quarter. And then once you get the threat of the quarterback run back in there, which you would think Mark Whipple would know with as long as he's been around football, that you can open up some of those rushing lanes again by getting the quarterback involved. You would just think, man, I would think a guy with this much experience would know how to have a game plan for his backup quarterbacks, especially when you have a full week to do that. I don't think it was a supporting cast issue today. I think Nebraska had the production they needed. They had a rushing attack. They had a passing attack. Whenever the rushing attack was going, the passing attack looked fine, especially whenever Logan Smoes was behind center. Yet Mark Whipple was so hesitant to make changes. It was just, I don't want to say fireable, but after what you saw last week, after what you saw this week, it's hard to go fireable offense for a guy who is dealing with his backup quarterback. But when you just contrast that to what's happening on the other sideline with Minnesota, they're able to go find a way to win. Not many teams, when their backup quarterback comes in, are they able to mount a comeback in the second half. Minnesota did just that, and I'd go as far as to say their offense looked better with the backup quarterback in.
Because he was athletic.
Full credit to that Minnesota coaching staff for drawing up a second half game plan that complemented his strengths. But whenever Nebraska's not able to draw up a game plan that complements their backup quarterback strengths, the alarm bells start going off. You say something is wrong here.
Well, and let's talk a little bit here about Minnesota's backup. Thrown in and didn't have an answer. They were very stagnant against Illinois in the second half. Then you got to go start at Penn State. You get drilled 45-13. Well, they come into Lincoln today after Captain Morgan gets knocked out by Ty Robinson, and they score 17 points. They score 17 unanswered with their backup after he, wasn't ready and didn't perform as a relief guy against Illinois. Got it handed to him by Penn State, okay? But you come into Lincoln and you're down 17. Or you're down 10, excuse me. And then it clicks for you. He's gotten better. He's been groomed. He's been developed, dare I say. And Mickey touched on that with a backup that came in and had game reps. Well, you got to address that. You got to adjust to that. And it's problematic here. And the other part too, scripted versus unscripted. Okay, you can go back to what worked until they stop it. You can go back and go double tight, ace formation, double team that nose guard, and get 4 like you did with Grant. Grant had 8 carries for 80 yards, 10 carries, 80 yards through the first 2 drives. He had 18 for 27 the rest of the ball game up until they made the switch to Logan. So you can go back to what works. It comes down to preference. It comes down to your system and your guy. And it comes down to stubbornness. And that's what, quite honestly, got the last guy shown the door. And he's too good. And he's too good. He's too good a coach for too many years with too many quarterbacks to dig his heels in like this. Period. I mean, you're done. You're 65. You have health issues. You're making a buttload of money. You got to follow orders, or there need to be orders given for him to follow. One of the two things need to happen by Saturday.
Now, I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but if this is Mark Whipple being stubborn and not listening to the advice of his head coach, that's another tally in the today was a fireable offense report card.
I don't think it was insubordination. I think Mickey's like, dude, I'm the CEO. You're the OC whip. Do your thing.
That's why I don't know what's going on, but that's why I said if. I'm not sure what's going on behind the scenes, but today was bad. I do really want to quickly flip this around and talk about the defensive performance in the second half because, the defense did enough for you to go win this football game. If you would have been told that Minnesota's held to 17 points, I mean, I predicted Nebraska would get 10 points total in the pregame show. 13, I was close. I guess Minnesota finished with 20 points today. Excuse me. But you get what I'm saying here. The fact that holding Minnesota to 20 points gives the offense a chance to win. But those 20 points all coming in the second half. It was a tale of two halves for that defense as well. And I gave credit to Minnesota for their game plan adjustments, and I want to stick with that. Minnesota made some great game plan adjustments with their offense to really help things out. But the defense lacked an edge in the second half. And Schmidt, I'm not sure if you noticed that as well. The defensive edge was not there, especially from the front seven in the second half. And they could have been worn down a little bit, but you saw life from guys like Ty Robinson, guys like Garrett Nelson, guys like
Caleb Tanner. The edges were great in the first half.
And in the second half, that life was not there as much. The defensive line started to get pushed around. You start seeing offensive linemen getting up to second level just a little bit more. The linebackers are dealing with guys in their face. And maybe it's a simple fact of the matter that Minnesota is able to game plan for what Nebraska was doing with their front seven in the second half. And then when it became a mano-a-mano battle, once you get the game plan right, Minnesota has the advantage. But I will say, and I'll need to go back and rewatch the film, which I'll probably do tomorrow, putting my coaching hat on for a second there. I'll watch the film before I make broad, sweeping judgments. But from what I saw, it was a front seven that lacked a bit of an edge. And I think you can represent that, or I guess personify that, in the fact that your leading tackler today was a safety. Miles Farmer was Nebraska's leading tackler today. I think 18 tackles before he left that game. And I do believe he came back in for the final drive. Or the final couple plays, I should say. But 18 tackles today from a safety. Luke Reimer was next. I don't have the stats pulled up in front of me.
I've got them pulled up here in a minute. But, no, to your point, I think they got worn down. And I think there was no run threat with Captain Morgan. There was a run threat with the backup. And they just one time with the quarterback run, but he kept it on his own read. How many times did they crash down and make it 2nd and 12 on Mo in the first half? Oh, quite a few on some do-or-die 3rd and 3s. Mo got nowhere to go because Nebraska had two guys pinch in and tackle him because Morgan wasn't going to pull that out of the mesh and keep it. But the backup did. He's more the athlete. He's more of a mobile threat. They ran it just enough. They rolled him in the pocket, and then he had one or two keepers that he got out on the edge, specifically with that go-ahead touchdown drive where it was a 16-yard gain, right? You have three big plays. Go ahead.
But the threat of the quarterback run doesn't stop some things I saw in the second half that I did see in the first half. And those things are defensive linemen getting pushed 5 yards off the ball to linebacker depth. And I know it happens occasionally in football, especially on double teams. But I was seeing one-on-one blocks or quick double teams where they were getting huge movement in that second half, getting defensive linemen 5 yards downfield, and then missed tackles. It looked a lot worse in the second half than it did in the first half. And I think it's because that defense just lacked a bit of an edge in the second half. It almost
they were tired. They were tired and they were demoralized. They were really pissed.
Where I was going.
They were pissed off that the offense of their 8 drives in the second half, they had 6 3-and-outs.
And that's where I was going. Is it almost looked like they were demoralized, that they put together what I would put as the best defensive half that they have played all year long. And Nebraska's offense was only able to have a 10-point lead. If you shut out a team in the first half, you should be able to build a little bit more of a lead than that. I know it's the backup quarterback, but still, as a defense, if you put together what I would put together as a pristine first half. The defense had a pristine first half, yet Nebraska was hanging on to a 10-point lead, and it did not feel as confident as a 10-point lead should feel when it's only 10-0 with how sterling that defensive performance was in the first half. I can see why you come out lacking a bit of an edge, because you say, you know what, we're holding up our end of the bargain. Where is the defense, or where is the offense holding up their end of the bargain? It just demoralizes you a little bit, and that's where I was talking about the fact that if Chubba Purdy is the starting quarterback for next week, you start seeing guys check out because you say, I can put together a great game today, and it might not matter because I don't trust the guy behind center. And right now I see a Husker team that does not trust the man behind center if that man is Chubba Purdy.
Well, they don't, and they also don't get complimentary football. You've got a bunch of guys that are getting major snaps that are also portal guys, okay? And how strong is the buy-in right now at 3-6? At some point, you're going to say, screw this, screw the offense. What the hell's going on? And the guys that have been in the program for 100 years, they're used to this because this is all they know. One side of the football is doing work. The other side of the football is not. And it rarely matches up. It's matched up against Indiana, and it matched up just enough against Rutgers, and it clearly didn't match up against Purdue because that was a shootout. And then you had last week where you had a good first half, and then your dog went down in the first half with the lead, and you just didn't have enough juice.
At what point does a guy like O'Shawn Mathis say, man, the team I left, they're in the top 15. What the hell am I doing at Nebraska on this 3?
You left because you probably weren't going to be starting.
But again, look at what all these guys came from. It's the same story with all of them. But Trey Palmer, that's another top 15 football team you left. And I know you left to go follow Mickey Joseph, but does that doubt start to creep into your mind of saying, did I go to the right place? With O'Shawn Mathis, did I go to the right place?
You
With
can't go for 237 1 week and then get held to one catch last week, and then you had 4 for 32 today, and I know it's a different quarterback. You can't drop 4th and game. You can't. And he did. He'll learn from it. He'll get better. Again, this is not personal or attack central, Real Red Reaction, but it's just enough BS going on between play calling and management and interim and quarterbacks and going milk carton in a first half or a second half. Play 4 quarters. Play 4 quarters. Get your team ready for 4 quarters. What you're seeing now is the Mickey naysayers and the experience factor be very real in these losses. Okay? There are just moments in a game where a more experienced coach, PJ Fleck, let's just use him as an example, push all the right buttons. Don't panic. Get the result. They had no He'll tell you they had no business winning after that first half, but they stuck with it. They hung with it. Nebraska had an opportunity to put it away, and they couldn't make the right play, make a play, or figure out some sort of consistency, get in any kind of rhythm. Then you wasted another good defensive performance.
Say what you will about PJ Fleck. He produces teams that fight, and they fight to the death. I've never seen a Minnesota team under PJ Fleck roll over. They have always continued fighting straight to the death. And Nebraska, to their credit, once Mickey's been installed, for the most part, has fought to the death in their games this season, the only exception really being Illinois. I guess Oklahoma as well. But PJ Fleck always has teams that fight to the death, fight tooth and nail, and look like they are put in a position by a coaching staff in terms of preparedness to go win a football game. PJ Fleck is a good football coach, and the simple fact of the matter is PJ Fleck and his staff simply outcoached Nebraska's staff this year. And Nebraska's staff this year, I don't think anyone is going to be fooled into believing this is an all-world staff that is coaching this Husker football team right now. It's a bit of a mishmash band of misfits that have been thrown together from holdovers from Frost combined with guys that were brought in just this offseason. It's a mishmash of weird guys. I don't think it's entirely unexpected that you have a continuity within a Minnesota coaching staff that is going to end up out-coaching Nebraska. But whenever you have a 10-point lead, it's just absolutely perplexing that Minnesota makes halftime adjustments, and it almost looks like they made halftime adjustments. What do we do now? That's all we had. All we had was what we showed you in the first 2 drives of this football game. We're done for now. What coaching staff at the Division I level with all the combined years of experience together can't make adjustments in game or halftime? And what coaching staff, especially offensively, saw that second quarter performance from Trevor Purdy and said, you know what, that's the guy we're going to roll with in the third quarter? I don't get it.
It started drifting very poorly, and I think Logan got in. He got in. I think the second drive or the second series against Minnesota in that second quarter, but you still went back to Purdy. You never let him get lathered up and get in rhythm. Joseph, Gopher fan, chimes in. So I've always heard this chant, but I don't know it. I know it's row the boat, ski uma. Go. What the hell is ski uma?
Sky uma.
It looks like ski. Sorry.
I looked into this.
But what is it? Is it Norwegian?
If my memory serves me correctly, it was just a chant that like one of their old football coaches did of just like random syllables.
Drunkenness
doesn't actually mean anything. It was just like one of their I think that's how they like broke down practice at the end when they put the hands in. It was like a team rallying cry,
so
just like random syllables. So I don't believe it actually means anything. It's just tradition. If there's any Gopher fans, Joseph, if you're still watching, You can chime in and correct me if I'm wrong here, but that's what my memory serves to me. That's like an old tradition from a previous football coach that just kind of stuck.
True or false, Elijah Herbal from Vic in Denver. Are you a little annoyed, Elijah?
A little is actually probably the right way to put it.
Be honest. Did you put money down on Minnesota?
I would be stupid to bet on any Husker game this season because no matter what I think is going to happen in a football game this year with Nebraska, I am going to be wrong. I swore off that a long, long time ago. It's a lose-lose situation. I don't do that no more. Anyway.
Anthony Grant, 21 carries, 115 yards. Long of the day was that first play of the game in the double tight where he went for 36 yards. And he had a few runs here and there. Trey Palmer, 5 for 37. Marcus Washington, 2 for 63. Vokalek targeted 3 times, 1 completion. Alante Brown. The other thing, too, right, and make somebody stop you doing something. But when Pretty did complete a pass, it's okay to do the short bubble or the stop route. That's what he hit. That's what got Logan going early, too. And to be honest with you, it's frustrating that you just don't keep going with something that's working or at least make them adjust you. Yeah, Minnesota could press up. And by the way, their safeties and corners, when they were forced to make a tackle, didn't miss a tackle. They were outstanding. Minnesota was an outstanding tackling football team today, and they are most of the time. But Nebraska, hopefully moving forward with Smothers, can get enough of a passing game where it's in the flat to the tight end. It's a check down to the running back. It's a slant or a seam to the tight end or a Palmer or a Washington. And you can live that way with your passing game, and you'll have a complement running the football with quarterback, but you got to call it to go with Grant.
Well, you have a 10-point lead at the half, and you have a guy in Anthony Grant that was at that point about to eclipse the 100-yard mark. I don't understand why you aren't at halfime finding ways to scheme that.
It ain't what you want to do. That's as simple as I can put it. It's not an excuse, but it's not what you want to do, and that needs to change by Saturday.
But the simple fact of the matter is that guy was your hot hand. If you go scheme up ways to get him some more rushing lanes, which the number one way I think of is by having the threat of Logan Smothers pulling that ball out and taking it around the corner. That's going to open up some rushing lanes. That's going to make those linebackers think. That's going to let Anthony Grant get 3-4 yards and fall forward. That is the best way to scheme up a guy like that, and that's the best way to take a 10-point lead and shorten that game for Minnesota, who is also running the football. You're going to run the football yourself, shorten that game, give Minnesota fewer chances, take your time of possession, and get that number up. You do that by going into halftime and scheming up ways to get Anthony Grant the ball in open space again, and I didn't see that at all. Anthony Grant was the best player on offense today, despite the fact that, most of his rushing yards came on the first 2 drives. He was the best player for that Husker offense today, yet Nebraska did not seemingly try to find ways to get him the ball and get him the ball in advantageous places. It seemed to me to be a case of, they've schemed up and they've found ways to stop Anthony Grant early. Let's keep on running those same old running plays that we're working on the first 2 drives and see if maybe one will work again. Like, there's just no adjustmts. And I guarantee I'm going to go back and look at the game film and realize that I was being a little overly critical of Whipple. That's always going to happen whenever you go back and look at the film. That's an old Frost quote. I'm going to bring it back. Sorry. But it's never as good as you think. And it's never as bad as you think when you go back and watch the film. And I'm sure I'm going to go back and it's not going to be as bad as I think. But just with my recollection, it was bad how little Nebraska tried to actually figure out a running game in the second half, aside from just going, the running plays that we came into this game with aren't working. Let's go throw the football. That's what the second half felt like, where it should have been, the running plays that we came into this game aren't working. Let's find some new ways to get Anthony Grant the football in space and get that guy going, because he was a spark early in this football game.
Let's hear from Ty Robinson and Caleb Tanner. We're here at Real Red Reaction. We're about an hour and 10 in. We'll go a little bit longer with some of your comments. Vic says, ski-oo translates, if you don't think it's hard to be a Husker fan now, try being a Minnesota fan. We've sucked since 1940. So 3 years of winning seasons makes us feel like national champs. Vic's got a little bitter to him today. I like it. It's okay. He's out in Denver. It's nice to hear from him again. We got a packed house here at the Single Barrel as it's 21-3 between the hedges. All Georgia. And it'll come to Jesus here from Jack Daniels U. Here is Ty Robinson, Caleb Tanner, post-game here on Real Red Reaction, ESPN Lincoln.
Ty, how long for you guys in the first half, and kind of what changed for you guys in the second half of Minnesota got?
Yeah, I think just the mentality we had leading up to the game with the last few meetings that we had. I mean, I think it really struck the guys of how we needed to come out for the game. First half, I thought we were on fire, and then obviously Minnesota was going to make adjustments. I mean, that as soon as they couldn't run the ball anymore, they were going to go pass, and the touch was on us. Just had to stay focused, stay locked in, and execute the small details.
I think as you're getting knocked out for you at the end of the first half, what kind of an opportunity is that to be up 10-0 coming out of the locker room and have their sixth-year senior quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it boosted me. I was ready to go. I mean, I didn't even realize it was the end of the quarter until I saw Jared Nelson going into the locker room. So I thought it'd be good momentum for us coming out because we knew that Minnesota was getting the ball back in the second half. Just got to stay focused and locked in.
How much of the second half was their adjustments, and how much was just you guys got worn down because you're on the field a lot?
I think they got a pretty smart staff over there. I think a lot of it was adjustment. They knew how focused we were on the run, and maybe they used the way to exploit us or in a way that we didn't see. But I think at the end of the day, I came here to play defense. I know everyone else did too. So no matter what, my job is to get the offense the ball back, and I'm happy to do that. Whether it's they're 3 and out or they go down and they take 5 minutes off the clock for them to score.
What's the general mood of the team? Where you feel like the motivation comes from here, the passion, all that stuff?
Yeah, I think most of us are disappointed with how this game turned out. I know I am, just with the hard work and the preparation and going into every week. But we're on to Michigan next. They're a tough opponent as well. We have to get to this game, watch it for the next 24 hours, analyze it, realize our mistakes, and then move on and make sure that we don't do it again next week.
I didn't feel different on the field in the second half versus first half.
I mean, not to me. No, I was trying my best to stay locked in the whole entire time, trying to keep guys up. I mean, there was no problem with that. I don't think the benches were good when we were coming off to the sideline. We were talking to each other, letting everyone know that we're okay and that we're going to get that ball back when we run out there and stop them. So I think that's just the main thing is us sticking together, and I think we've done a pretty good job.
You kind of a bit of a bag after you see it, like pickups. Is it just a product of them opening up and throwing it and then it opens up?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really get to see much of his action today. I think the only time I really got to see it is when we were on the goal line. It was on we scored that touchdown towards the north end. But, yeah, we knew Ibrahim was going to be a pretty good back coming in, probably one of the best backs we faced. We knew he was a strong downhill runner and he was ready to hit. And, I mean, like I said, that was our main focus, was to take out the run.
You see some teams that play similar style or they sense and this is what would be.
How we came out the first half, I think, is the best way to go about it. That's got to be every game from here on out, and it's got to be more than just the first half. I don't think we were burnt out in the second half, but I mean, to keep that fire still going through halftime, because even halftime the locker room dudes were up, and we were excited and ready to go back out there, and we were getting our adjustments from our coaches and getting an adjusted game plan as well. So from going here forward, I mean, that's just how we got to play. And I mean, when I talk about executing the defense, I mean the first half is how I picture us executing the defense. So when one guy's not missing those things, then we start rolling and you see what we can do.
Ty Robinson, Sparty up 10-7 over Illinois as we're here at the Single Barrel. Probably about 15, 20 more minutes. You want to chime in, join us here We're across different platforms, 96 Kicks Facebook, KFOR Facebook, ESPN Lincoln Facebook, and then different Twitter platforms for you. Twitter on KFOR, Twitter on ESPN Lincoln, and then Twitter on the ESPN and Hail Varsity handles as well at H Varsity Radio, where you can follow us and then watch us live here on YouTube TV or YouTube stream with Real Red Reaction. You need a coffee? This is stream only. There's no commercial break. Son of a gun. So we've done a little something different. We've tried to do a handful of games just stream only, because you can catch this on your phone or on Twitter or on Facebook and watch and interact that way. We've got an opportunity to be running Georgia, Tennessee. Maybe Michigan will be over the air next week. We still need a kickoff time for that. Have you ixnayed the road trip to Ann Arbor after today's performance?
Yes, that is not going to be happening. No, I have much better things I can be doing on a Saturday than the red-eye drive to Michigan. Excuse me. The Big House would be cool, but maybe another year. I hope I have plenty of years left in my life to be able to make that trip in a year where Nebraska may actually be competitive. But from what I saw today, Nebraska's defense, while I think they'll probably have a good game plan, or this might be a close game in the first quarter, Michigan's rushing attack is probably just going to be too much, and I'm looking way too far ahead. I was going to add, though, whenever you're talking about the different ways to check us out, if you miss being on the air, leave us a comment. We're trying to figure out what the fan sentiment is for these stream-only games. We like the interaction we can get in the chat room, but if you miss being able to call in, if you miss being on the air, leave us a comment. Let us know what you think, and we'll work to make this show the best for what the people want. But, yeah, back to Husker football here. Michigan just is a tall task next week. That's the simplest way to put it. I am terrified of handicapping what this line is going to be. My early inclination would be Michigan 22. Does that sound about right to you, Schmitty?
Oh, I think Michigan's going to be favored 27.5.
Ooh.
Okay. The other question I have here: what's the health of Reimer? He went out. Okay. So that's big. That's key. And another part I'm interested in is, what's the morale like if you don't get an answer, if this coaching stuff looms. Today was big, and today's second half was not good. You were still in it, but it's two halves in a row now. Illinois, now Minnesota, where you were drilled, and it shows your inexperience as a manager because your team didn't perform and win, and specifically your offense. Your offense has been a nightmare for two halves. You'll take 10 points in a Big Ten football game. That's a decent point total. Not great in the first half, but you need more than 3 in the second half. And that's your job. That's your responsibility, and you've got to get on the same page with your offensive line coach. You've got to get on the same page as your offensive coordinator, and you've got to get your studs to be studs. One guy was today, and that was Grant, right? You went away from him. Why? I need that answer tomorrow. Palmer's been living off of Purdue for 3 weeks now. Dude, it's time to step up, make some plays, make some catches. That's my message if I'm Mickey to Palmer. And then from a quarterback standpoint, who's going to give us the best chance to win? That's, again, quoting what's the thought bubble of a coach. I'm not saying us. I don't play for Nebraska. But Nebraska needs to quit jacking around with how it looks or the sexiness, okay? Just get dirty and run the football. Grind it out. Compliment your defense. How many times did Bashimi just freaking drill a punt inside the 20? I mean, Minnesota started off with god-awful field position most of the game. It's because special teams was killer. The kicking game was money for Nebraska. And you had enough He had enough going to get this win today.
Mhm. Well,
Period.
you mentioned the fact that 13 points, 20 points is enough to get done in a Big Ten football game, but it's not enough to get done in a Big Ten football game when you play the offense the way you do. If you're running the ball 45 times in a football game for 175 yards, you put up 17 points, that could be enough to win the football game because you're almost guaranteed to win time of possession with those kind of numbers. But the way Nebraska plays football, you don't win time of possession. Other teams are going to have the ball plenty of times, and giving another team plenty of chances against this defense makes me think this defense is going to have a breakdown here or there. This is not a perfect defense. It's much improved from where it was at against Oklahoma, but this defense still has its warts. It's going to break down eventually. It's going to wear out with how thin that defensive line is. If you're not winning time of possession solidly, 13 to 17 points is not enough for Nebraska to win. I'd venture to say, moving forward this season, the minimum if Nebraska wants to win football games, Michigan's its own beast, but I'll just put the number solidly at 24 to 27 over the remaining 3 games. And I know Michigan's a little bit different, but if I talk about this game, I talk about Wisconsin, I talk about Iowa, that's the number Nebraska needs offensively. If you can put up 24 to 27 points with your offense, I think you have a good chance to beat Wisconsin and Iowa. And maybe things change once Casey Thompson gets back into the fold. But right now, I don't see an offense that I think I'm confident in going and putting up 24 to 27 points. I think a 13-point output today was about fair from what we saw from this offense. We saw 3 drives total that I thought were good drives. And those ended up being points, 2 field goals and a touchdown. But 3 total drives throughout an entire game being up to snuff, being worthy of calling yourself a Division I football team to get 3 drives, it's just this offense right now is poor, to say the least. And I don't sure I trust this offense to go get you 20 points in any game remaining on the season. And hopefully I don't have to go burn this tape because from my takes with Nebraska this year
against the defenses, I mean, that's going to be a major ask to get 2 touchdowns.
I think that changes if Casey Thompson's behind center. If Casey Thompson's behind
absolutely.
center, I mean, 21 points will probably do it for you against Iowa if Casey Thompson's behind center.
Let's ask that question.
Wisconsin.
Do you think Casey's back for Michigan?
What's the upside to me? If I'm sure.
Well, are you going to compete?
He's guy wants to play. Yeah. If you're a coaching staff, do you look at that game and go, we got a 75-80% Casey Thompson for Michigan. Do you want to try him out there against a defensive front that's a defensive front that's going to get after you and could re-aggravate this injury whenever we could give this another week and get him 2-game run out at 100%? That's where my mind goes. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I don't know.
You're still alive for a bowl game.
I just don't know if Casey Thompson did he not play today at 85% or did he not play today at 50%? I don't know what that number.
He didn't play today because it's still hot and cold with numbness. All right.
What does that mean in terms of where he's at with his return? Like I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I don't think the coaching staff's going to give us any inclination. So I think it's probably going to be one of those things where next Saturday we're going to be just as surprised as everybody else if we see if Casey Thompson is on the field or not for the Huskers. I'd venture to say he's going to at least travel with Michigan simply for the fact that you want Michigan to have that in the back of your mind even if he doesn't play. But I could not tell you what his percentage is, and therefore I can't tell you. I think he's a gamer, and I think if he's 90-95% for next week's game against Michigan, I think you throw him out there. But if he's at 75%, now you got to think – do you protect this kid who wants to go compete?
Yeah. Well, and the other part of this too, and Rock chimes in here. Rock Westfall, our old pal in Wisconsin, says that Mickey sounded weak at the presser about whip. The HC has every right to send the meal back and reorder. That's why he's a head coach. It's all about the hire, and that doesn't sell. Well, it's all about getting a yes to somebody you think can do better than Mickey. Can you get that yes if you're Trev Alberts? You would hope so with an experience standpoint. But the reality is you've had 2 mismanaged second halves the last 2 weeks with games you had the lead in. Okay? And that needs to be answered for. Period. Because Minnesota just figured it out with their backup. And you're going to have to win a game or 2 in November in the Big Ten with a key cog missing because of injury. And here's the thing. I know people want a sacrificial lamb. You've already been given the Chinander sacrifice early. Okay. I don't think you pop Whipple because Casey may come back, and we've seen the offense look good with Casey back. 2, just be direct. He's got to answer to you. If he doesn't or won't, then you can his ass. But be the guy in charge. Mm-hmm. End of discussion. And now, 3 strikes, you're out. 2 strikes here for having more autonomy and direction with what the offense needs to do to win a football game. And Nebraska didn't have that. Didn't have that in the second half today.
You mentioned what Mickey needs to do as a head coach. That you want to finish the show here? Do you want to discuss what today's loss meant for Mickey Joseph and his
let's finish that up.
I think that's probably where this conversation is going to go for a lot.
That's where it's going to go Monday for us as well.
Yep.
But no, listen. To me, it's another big question mark about readiness to lead. It's another big question mark about management and inexperience. Okay, can you get up to speed quickly now after 2 missteps or tough situations? Let's call them that with your quarterback. And what your offense can and can't do, or what you believe your offense can and can't do. You were wrong. You were wrong twice with what you did at quarterback. And you can't be wrong anymore. Or have them manage and be better in a different area so that you can lean on that area, okay? Let's see how they play against Michigan. I'm not asking to go up there and win. Don't go pull a Devaney. That'd be really cool if they did, but no. Can you play a better 4-quarter game? Can you play a better 4-quarter game against Wisconsin? To me, there's still some season left. You can have a couple of missteps with a backup quarterback situation, learn from it, get better, and finish strong. So I'm not shutting the door. I honestly just think you're not going to get the yes you want if you're Trev. So then what?
That's a great question. That's what I think today did. Is today took Mickey from being a guy that is in contention to be a guy to get the job like on his own merit to a guy that is now probably your backup plan. Yeah. And that's no offense to Mickey there, but I think that's what the fact of the matter is. From what I've seen from Mickey Joseph, I think he's got potential to be a great head coach someday. I think he connects great with his players. I think he recruits really, really well. I think he's a smart coach. I do think there is potential moving forward for him to be a head coach. I just don't think that time is right now for him to be a head coach. And
there's not a line of people, partner, lined up to hire Mickey Joseph as their head coach right now.
I don't think
he's
so.
Under consideration. And our old Rock Chalk Jayhawk in some weird ass blue tops and red pants are leading Oklahoma State 17-7.
Well, I would say that's the kind of gig. Kansas of a couple of years ago is the kind of gig that I think would be right for a guy like Mickey Joseph. Go to some place with low expectations where you can learn a little bit more about being a head coach, build your resume up as a head coach. But you get what I'm saying. A place like Kansas as of a couple of years ago, a place where, you can go try and fail. You can go try and succeed. You can go learn a lot about yourself as a head coach. I just don't think he's ready for a job like Nebraska with where Nebraska is at right now. And that's no offense to Mickey. That's why I think, you know what, you can keep him as a backup plan because I think he's got an abundance of potential to be a great head coach someday. I think he's got all the tools in his back pocket. He's a great recruiter. He is a great relationship builder, not only with his players, but it sounds like with his staff as well. He's able to go out and deal well with the media. He's got all the tools to be a great head coach someday. I just think he needs a little more seasoning, a little more time in the oven. And if Mickey goes off and decides to be a head coach at a smaller school in Power 5, I'm talking the Kansases of the world, the Oregon States of the world, maybe Georgia Tech. I know that's an opening. Maybe that's the right stop for him, but I just don't think he's ready to be a head coach right now. And I think today was the final nail in the coffin to prove that to me with just how badly that Nebraska coaching staff was outcoached by Michigan following the opening drive. Or sorry, I should say outcoached by Minnesota following the open drive. Minnesota outcoached this Nebraska team. I think that's just a case of a guy who needs a little bit more experience at the head coach position. The question is, as you said, how many no's are you going to get in the next couple of weeks? I don't believe from what
I'm wondering how many no's. I wonder how many no's they've already gotten.
That's where I was just going to go. From what we've heard in the past, I'd say week, it sounds like there hasn't been any official contract offers. I wonder, is that because you're slow playing it and you want to make sure that you're not choosing the wrong guy? You want to be patient through this process, or is it because you're doing that tentative reach out. We're talking to a friend of a coach. Would he be interested in Nebraska? Are you getting back a lot of no's? What is that situation going on behind the scenes? I don't know, but all I know is Trev better be getting a whole bunch of no's if Mickey is the guy he lands on. And I think that's going to be a great indication of what's going on behind the scenes is how many no's is Nebraska getting? If Mickey ends up being the head guy, Nebraska got a ton of no's. I think we can say pretty confidently, Schmitty, who some of these guys near the top of Trev's list are. When I think of Rule, when I think of Aranda, whenever I think of, after the report this week, Gary Patterson. I do believe Gary Patterson's probably on that list somewhere. And I know you don't like him.
I think Gary's a bit of a psycho, and that's from other coaches I've talked to. Like he's a really good coach, but he's a really good coordinator. And he was great at TCU, but something had to go way sideways. He built them into being really, really good, and they canned his ass, okay? He wants some redemption. I get it. He left the cupboard loaded for their program now. I get it. But no, I don't need Gary Patterson as a 62-year-old coming in here. If I can get Gary, he's out. He's available. Rule's available. Okay. Leipold is still high on my list, as is Kleiman. Okay. There Stoops. Maybe your boy Fickle from Cincinnati. I mean, there's a lot of guys I would go say no before I hire Mickey. This sounds again bad, but if I'm stuck with Mickey, I can work with that. The other part of this too. The other part of this too is Mickey. The other part of this too is with Mickey. What's Mickey's offense look like if he gets to hire his own offensive coordinator?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, someone that's loyal to him, and you would hope that Whipple would take orders or they'd put a game plan together. I mean, we go down that road, but right now this is all a hodgepodge of Frost.
And Mickey, to your point, not only putting together his own staff, what can he do with an offseason in the transfer portal, an offseason of recruiting? That all remains to be seen. But back to my original point here, I don't think, based on what I've seen, there is any way that Mickey can be Trev's number one guy based on what I've seen. I think he should be on the list. I think there should be consideration there for Mickey, but I don't think he should be or is the number one guy for Trev right now. So that's something to follow moving forward. If Mickey is seemingly factoring heavily into this decision, I think it's because Trev's going out and getting a whole bunch of no's. If the Mickey name cools over the next week or two, it's because I think there's interest out there in the Nebraska job. That's how you can kind of read the tea leaves over the next couple of weeks is what does this do for Mickey? Because my unbiased eyes here, not knowing what's going on behind the scenes, makes me think that Mickey is not the guy for the job, and I think Trev should be able to see that. But if Mickey remains a hot name for the next couple of weeks through reports leaking out, and I guess we'll see how tight of a ship Trev is running as well with this job search as well. But Mickey continues to remain a hot name. I think that could be your indication that Nebraska is getting some no's behind the scenes.
Totally agree. That's Elijah Herbal, Chris Schmidt. We're presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency. It's Real Red Reaction. Going to wind down the show here. 90 minutes, powering through. Thanks for all of your input, insight, and camaraderie here to sound off on things. We'll be back Monday at 4 on Hail Varsity Radio and give you a chance to dial in there. It was a stream only because of number 1 versus number 2, Georgia and Tennessee. We'll be back on the air after Michigan, whenever that kickoff time is next weekend. But many thanks to you. Big thanks to Currency. Big thanks to Hail Varsity. And big thanks to our partners in Alpha with KFOR and 96 Kicks and ESPN Lincoln on Twitter and Facebook Live. And we'll have this show posted as well on Real Red Reaction YouTube channel. So take it with on your time, podcast-wise. Elijah, ice up. Enjoy the extra hour tomorrow. And we'll come ready for work on Monday.
Yes, sir. I do need a nap. That the lack of sleep following that wedding last night was starting to catch up to me in the last half hour, if you couldn't tell by my yawns. I'm still feeling good, but I am looking forward to a little mid-afternoon nap once this I guess it's going to be a late afternoon nap once this Tennessee-Georgia game finishes up. I think we're about going to halftime there, correct?
It's been a long second quarter for sure. But right now that score is Let me pull it up here.
20. I think it's 23.
21-6. 21-6.
Yeah, 21-6. Yeah.
Well, my little niece Josie is going to have a birthday next week, and she took Nebraska in the points, so she's all smiles.
Good for her. Good birthday gift for her is that betting slip, I'm sure.
All right. We'll see you.
Smitty.
All right, Elijah, be good. Take care.
Smitty, you be good. Talk
Thanks
to you
for
on Monday.
tuning in. Yep, you too.